Hey guys, Mahal everyone, 40 the Broadway Saiyan here. Welcome to my YouTube channel, this time with another video on Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Leonhardt again, for fun or for glory. So we're going to be taking a deeper dive into his abilities, what this character can actually do, and how he's going to stack up to the current better characters right now in the global version of the game. Now before I start the video, I will be reminding you guys that the links for the actual Leonhardt event video that I did earlier will be in the video description as well as the pinned comments. And also Square Enix recently released their trailer for this character upon the making of this video, so I'll be leaving the link to that video as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and move forward with Leonhardt for fun or for glory. So what does this character bring to us upon his release? He brings to us high damage prowess with a dark element. So as we went over his abilities in my last video, he wields the dark element, and rightfully so because he is a dark knight, and he also has very high damage prowess with a very high attack stat. Now he also brings to us flexibility because he's able to deal with both single and multiple targets, and one of his abilities is physical and the other is magic. So if you're up against a boss, for example, that resists physical, well, at least you have the magic ability to fall back on. He also brings the ability to self-sustain his HP, and he also acts as an off healer to the party if you have the right setup or passives for him. He also brings Brave utility to himself with one of his passives, because if he excessively heals, he actually converts that over to his Brave. So he's able to sustain his Brave a little bit, so then that way he can protect himself from getting broken. And he has amazing percentages to his attack stat, coming from his passives or his auras and buffs. And we will take a look at just how much attack that this guy actually stacks with his auras and his buffs. So we're going to first take a look at his abilities. We're going to take a look at the percentages and what they actually do. So his first one is Dark Slash, and this is going to be with all passives considered, with the 15 CP and with his crystal passive level 55. So first of all, we get 200% Brave damage potency, which is pretty good for an ability. We get a 50% HP splash damage to other targets, so now this character can actually deal damage to multiple targets, not just one target with this ability, which is pretty good. He also provides himself a 20% attack up for 5 turns, so this is a buff, so he further increases his damage output. And then he also grants himself the Dark Knight unique buff for 5 turns. This buff does stack up to 3 times, and the stack that you are granted is dependent on the Brave amount damage that he deals. So Dark Knight also increases attack and max Brave, which helps him out even further because he is a damage machine. So if you get one stack, which is dealing less than 75% of his max Brave, you will be granted 10% attack and 20% max Brave from one stack of Dark Knight. At 2, which you get from 75% to 100% of max Brave, it grants him 20% attack and 40% max Brave. And then at the maximum at 3, which you get if you deal damage over 100% of his max Brave, he gets 30% attack and 60% max Brave. So you're seeing that this guy really likes to stack a lot of offensive buffs and auras to himself, which is amazing. Now the second ability we're going to take a look at is going to be Dark Bind. Again, all passives considered, this time for his 35 CP and also his crystal passive level 60. So with this ability, we get a 140% Brave damage potency. We also get AoE HP divided damage. So this one is AoE HP divided versus the other one being Splash. A little less effective, but hey, at least this ability can still deal with multiple targets. It also heals Leon's HP based on 60% of HP damage dealt. It also heals allies' HP based on 60% of damage dealt up to 10% of their max HP, so now he can act as an off healer. And he has a 100% chance to inflict sap for 5 turns, and sap can work alongside poison, so a very nice debuff there. And this now also grants him the Dark Knight unique buff for 5 turns. The stacking conditions are going to be the same as Dark Slash. And one thing that I also did forget to mention is that this ability does deal 60% more damage if you are using it against a single target. So using this on like a boss that's just by itself, you're going to deal more damage with it. And it also changes his Brave attack to Brave attack plus when his HP is at 50% or greater, and as long as you have that Dark Knight unique buff active. And his Brave attack plus is essentially just a harder hitting Brave attack at 180% Brave damage potency. So now we're going to take a look at just how much attack is this guy stacking with his auras, his passives, his buffs. So let's take a look at the first way he grants himself more attack. His crystal passive level 15 is called attack proficiency. So it increases his attack by 2% for every brave hit up to 10 times. So this caps out at 20%. So we have 20% attack increase there. And remember, this is an aura, so this is not a buff. Now the second one we're going to be getting is from his crystal passive level 30. It's called heal attack. It increases his attack by 1 turn after he receives a heal. That's a 10% attack increase. Now we're going to go on to the next one, Dark Knight unique buff. At its maximum capability, it's a 30% attack increase, as we saw earlier at 3 stacks. Then afterwards, he gets small attack up buff from his Dark Slash. That's for 5 turns. This is at a 20% attack increase. So Dark Knight and the small attack up, those are in the form of their buffs, okay? And then afterwards, we have his crystal passive level 50 called Proof of Power, where he increases his particular stats as long as he has that Dark Knight unique buff active. However, when we're talking about the attack, this is going to be at 10% attack increase. Now, if we have all of the right artifact passives equipped on it, it's going to be up to 25%. Okay, that's the maximum potential of that. And then finally, his crystal passive level 58, Dark Knight attack and boost up. He gets a 40% attack increase while Dark Knight is active. So let's add this up, okay? So 20% from the first one, and then we get 10% from the second one, that's 30%. And then from his unique buff, Dark Knight, 30%, so we're at 60% now. The small attack buff, that's at 20%, so that's 80%. And then let's just say that you have the right artifact passives. So we're at 25%, so what's that at? 105%. And then finally, with his crystal passive level 58, that's at 40%. So 145% attack increase. And keep in mind, Leonhardt actually already has a very high attack stat naturally. So this guy is stacking a lot of attack. So what does this mean? That means that he has the potential to hit his max brave amount quite quickly, and he also can break enemies very easily because of just how much attack that he's stacking from his passives, his auras, and his buffs. So we're going to take a look at now his pros and cons, because there is no such thing as a perfect character. We already know this. So his pros are high attack stat and amazing auras and buffs to further boost it. His high attack, again, like we mentioned, helps him reach his max brave amount faster. Flexibility, he wields both physical and magic abilities, and he could deal with single or multiple targets. He can self-sustain his own HP, and he can also off-heal for the party. He can also lightly sustain his Brave with excessive HP heals from his level 40 passive. So the way that works is that if he excessively heals himself, it's converted into Brave up to 150% of his initial Brave amount. And now going on to his cons. So what are Leonhardt's cons? Both of his abilities are locked to the Dark Element, and this is problematic if you're up against a very tough boss that resists the Dark Element. He lacks an Imperil debuff for the Dark Element. I feel like he could have been given an Imperil because he's already wielding Dark on both of his abilities, so if one of them could Imperil, it would have been good, but yeah, he lacks an Imperil, unfortunately. And also, his stacking mechanic is designed oddly. So, if you remember, the way that his stacking mechanic works is you are granted a certain amount of stacks depending on the amount of Brave that you dealt to the enemy, and the percentage is based on that. So his last one, which takes advantage of the full maximum 3 stacks, requires his Brave to be over 100% of his max Brave. Well, here's the problem. He doesn't have overflow. This almost reminds me of the way they designed Squall's unique buff from his EX ability, where you can't stack it with multiple users of his EX. So not entirely sure why this character doesn't have overflow, because right now he can't take advantage of 3 stacks immediately of Dark Knight. So essentially you have to use his abilities twice to be able to get that full 3 stacks rather than just getting it right away. So that's where the cons are as far as Leonhardt, but overall, he's not bad. He's pretty good. He hits hard. So we're going to go on to my final thoughts about the character. So overall, with his extremely high attack potential, he can contend with some of our top damage dealers. However, with the cons that I listed, so having only the Dark Element, no Imperil, a weird stacking mechanic because he has no overflow, he still leans more towards the side of for fun rather than a character that would be for glory. But he is underrated, okay? So he's underrated like some of the other characters that recently got level 60, like for example, Steiner, I feel like is underrated. Steiner is actually pretty good. Shadow, there's some characters out there that got their awakenings, like I said, that are underrated, that can actually do quite well, just not as well as some of the better characters like Beatrix, Kate Sith, Selphie, you know? But with the right team setup, this character can actually do quite well, but he still leans more on the side of for fun. Now, running a character who has HP regen would definitely complement this character, so then that way you're taking advantage of his crystal passive level 50. So remember, that's the one where he gets a 10% attack increase for 1 turn when he receives a heal. So with an HP regen, he's getting a heal every turn or however long that regen lasts. So essentially, he's taking advantage of this crystal passive every single time. So a character that would complement this would be like Beatrix. If you run him with Beatrix, she could actually use her Saint Cloth, and as long as you have the passive for that ability, you get the HP regen. Or you can even run it with Kate Sith, or just some kind of an HP regen would help Leonhardt out. That way he's taking advantage of his crystal passives. As far as artifact passives go to focus on, you're going to want Proof of Power 2-star. That way you're getting the full maximum amount of percentages from that passive. You're going to want attack plus 108, so then that way he's getting even more attack. And then I put max brave plus 330 last, and the only reason I did this is because he has no overflow. If this character had overflow, I might have switched the order around there, but that's the artifact passives that you want to shoot for. And then also, you will want his 35 CP weapon. So we know we're getting a copy of his 15 CP, but the reason why you want his 35 CP is that, so when you use his Dark Bind, he can also give himself the Dark Knight unique buff, because if you don't have the 35 CP, you can only get that Dark Knight unique buff by using Dark Slash. And then finally, something that I want to add is that later on, Leon actually becomes way more powerful. He did receive a rework recently on JP. He got his level 70, and he gets an EX weapon. So he becomes a lot better. So if you decide to invest in this character now, yeah, right now he's still going to be a little bit more for fun, but later on he becomes way better and he becomes a pretty good investment. So something to look forward to for those of you that plan on building up Leonhardt. Alright guys, well this is going to be it for this video. Hopefully those of you who plan on building Leon, this video helps you guys out and understand just how good this character is and how he stacks up compared to some of the better characters that we currently have in the global version of Opera Omnia. Once again, I am 40 the Broadway saying stay tuned for my next video, and mahal everyone.